Good evening, and sorry for the delay. We had some unforeseen technical difficulties. Today is March 14th, 2024. This is a meeting of the City of Riviera Beach Planning and Zoning Board meeting. It is 6:38 p.m. If anyone wants to speak on an agenda item, please complete a public comment card and give it to the Planning and Zoning staff prior to the board discussion and before the public comment section is announced. Could we have a moment of silence, please? Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Although we don't have a flag in here, just do our best. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Chairperson Fernandez,
Here.
Vice Chair Wiley,
Here.
Board Member Burgess, Board Member Shepherd, here, Board Member Guyton,
Here.
Anthony Brown,
Here.
James Gallen. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Before we proceed, since Ms. Burgess is not here, can we have Mr. Brown as a voting member for the night, please, sworn in?
Would you like to make a motion or a vote, sir?
Yes. Do I have a motion to accept Mr. Brown as a voting member for tonight?
So move.
Second.
Chair Fernandez,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Yes.
Margaret Shepherd. Yes. Bruce Guyton,
Yes.
unanimous vote.
Thank you. Any acknowledgement of board member absence notifications?
None, Mr. Chair.
Acknowledgement.
I'm sorry, I do stand corrected. Our alternate, Mr. Gallen, did provide notice that he would be absent for this evening's meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Acknowledgement of board vacancies.
Currently, we have two vacancies for alternate positions for District 4 and 5.
Additions and deletions to the agenda tonight.
None, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any disclosure from board members?
None, Mr. Chair. I think the board.
None for me.
Okay, before we move on, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Chair Fernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiley,
Yes.
Margaret Shepherd. Yes. Bruce Guyton,
Yes.
Anthony Brown.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
We now move on to number 5, approval of meeting minutes for January the 11th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Chair Fernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiley,
Yes.
Margaret Shepherd. Yes. Bruce Guyton,
Yes.
Anthony Brown.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you. Unfinished business?
None, Mr. Chair.
Can we now move on to new business, please?
Item 7A, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 31, zoning on behalf of Second Avenue Properties applicant, approving a rezoning amendment application ZA-23-0010 to rezone a plus minus 0.1127 acre parcel located at 30 East 22nd Court, PCN 564342281500001290, and a plus minus 0.1466 acre portion of 2230 Broadway, parcel 128, PCN 564342281500000170, from a single-family dwelling district, RS8, to a downtown core zoning district, DC, providing for applicability, conflicts, severability, and codification, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm Kirk Thompson, a principal planner for the Development Services Department. I will be presenting this before you. You've heard this before, but I'm also going to try to give us a brief but thorough whole presentation, primarily for Mr. Guyton. So since Mr. Guyton is a new member, and the other members are familiar, but I want to make sure I cover everything for you, Mr. Guyton.
And Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, sir.
and just to refresh the board, this item has been before you previously. It was continued because the board was desirous of additional information. And since then, we have the review and approvals or no objection from the city's engineers, from the utility district and the city engineer, which would cover the concerns related to drainage and others that came up the last time this item was before you. So I wanted to point out that that sheet is in your packet. We do have paper copies as well, but we did since have the city's engineers both weigh in on this item. Therefore, it is back before you for a decision this evening.
Mr. Sermon, I just was handed Plan Corrections Report ZA 230010 by Mr. Thompson. Under engineering, Terrence Bailey, not required. I do not see an approval here. I do see an approval from John Armstrong, and is still in review from Kurt Thompson.
Well, that's because I need to present it to all of you.
So the only one we have approval here from is Mr. Armstrong on this form.
You have Mr. Armstrong. Also, if I may say, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to supersede the director, but in speaking of Mr. Bailey, he indicated that he didn't have any concerns regarding the rezoning, and that he did not need to weigh in any further at this point in time.
Perfect, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. He said he did not have to be here to stand before us and give us an update. So we take his word. Is that what you're saying?
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to add additional context to the form in front of you, this is from the software that the city uses to review projects. So Mr. Bailey, Mr. Armstrong, all of the staff that review this, they log into this software through their secure credentials, look at the materials, and provide comments to the applicant to say, hey, I need additional information, or this needs to be corrected. And once they're satisfied, they approve it. In the case of Mr. Bailey, the city engineer on this one, he said that further review was not required from him due to the nature of the this being a zone change request. So he has looked at it, reviewed the materials, and his response has been that the engineering review is not required. He doesn't need additional information or additional items that he needs to weigh in for this one, and he is satisfied that it meets all of the requirements that he looks into for this. So him selecting that status for his review indicates that he has signed off on the project.
Mr. Chair,
Shepherd,
I'm totally kind of confused. We had concern, at least I had concerns of what I saw. So Mr. Bailey is saying that he signing off and didn't have to appear before us. We have to take his word that he's signing off on this. Is this the way this goes, or I'm not clear?
Yes, he is the one that has indicated on here that no further review is required from him. So that is, in essence, him giving his word that he signs off, that he has no problem with this proceeding and being voted on and moved forward to city council.
Mr. Chair, may I go back, because I think we had a big rain a few days ago in my area, and I did get in my car and I did go around and really look. There is a drainage problem. There is water there in front of these homes, and if you're going in back of these homes, there is a water problem. So what do? We just say, okay? I don't get it. I just don't get it, Mr. Sherman. Not trying to be funny, but there is a water problem. And I made sure that day that it rained very bad that I went out there and I looked. I think I'm thinking that it should be looked in a little bit more. Where's that water going? Because it just stayed right in front of this one house, and I went over to the back, and there was puddles of water with people coming off of 22nd Street for the light. So there is a drainage problem, and I beg to differ with this, that he signs off, and I should have took pictures. I really should have took pictures of the amount of water that was standing in front of not only their particular entity, but right in front of a neighbor's house. So we're signing off, and then when there's rain or flood or whatever, somebody can say, you guys never looked at it, or you're looking over it, I think the word is.
Mr. Sarmans, can I get just a little clarification? This is a rezoning, am I correct?
That is correct.
So in other words, if the property owner wants to do anything on the property or develop it, then Mr. Bailey and all the engineers would get together and work on a drainage solution for that parcel, correct?
That is correct.
So that parcel is there now. And all they're looking is to rezone it.
Correct. This application in itself does not approve a specific development or type of improvement or paving or anything that changes the current status of that area. This approval, if approved by council, this application, if approved by council, would simply effectuate that this list of uses in the downtown core zoning district are now allowed on this lot. Those uses are allowed. If someone wants to construct a building to house one of those uses, then they would need to bring a site plan that is reviewed by the city engineer for drainage. And after that, a building permit that is further reviewed by the city engineer as it relates to drainage, and oftentimes by the South Florida Water Management District. So there are additional information, documentation, drainage reports, and things that come with constructing a development on any parcel. This particular application only states that these uses are allowed there, and subsequently, if someone wants to construct something for one of those uses, then we look more specifically at the calculations and the reports as it relates to drainage to ensure that there's no adverse effect to neighboring properties.
And I believe the property is now being used as a parking lot, which I believe that's the intended use down the line, a parking lot.
I believe that is the case on the ground right now.
Well, we'll hear from the applicant, but on my recollection from the last one. So can we just proceed, Mrs. Thompson, can you do?
No, we cannot.
Ma'am,
I had the floor.
Ms. Shepherd, all we're doing is asking him to proceed with his presentation.
I had the floor. I
Go ahead, Ms.
was still
Shepherd.
asking questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Shepherd. What are the questions?
Okay, so let's recap this. So right now, we're just reviewing the plan. If they come back, does it come back to planning and zoning, or is this just it? They're just gonna do the parking lot?
You are correct. What's in front of you right now is just the zoning, just the
Just
list of
the
uses.
zoning. Okay, so
Correct.
when they have to come back to build anything, or what are you saying?
So yes, if the zoning is approved, then they are eligible to come back to get a site plan for the property in question. Now, I will say that the scale of the proposed development generally does not require a public hearing site plan, because it's the size of a residential lot is the size of it. So generally something of that scale doesn't go to city council, and it's an administrative process. However, if there are other concerns, we could talk. I would consult with legal to see if we could facilitate there being a follow-up presentation or something to the effect of making this board feel comfortable with anything that's proposed there. But just to outline the general process, if the zoning is in place, they are allowed to submit a site plan application for their desired use. That site plan would have requirements for attachments that address drainage, among other things, for the project. That's drainage, landscaping, elevations, all of those things that are applicable. would be attached to that site plan application. Staff would review it. If it meets the city ordinances, it's stamped and approved. Then the applicant has to submit the actual construction permits that are reviewed again, and they have to include even more detailed language about the proposed drainage, um, the drainage systems that will be installed to ensure that the water that falls on that property does not flow into any neighboring properties or adversely affect the streets or any of the adjacent uses. But that's done at the subsequent stages, and at each stage, the city engineer and multiple other city employees review to make sure that they are meeting the minimum standards. And then again, in most cases, the South Florida Water Management District also has to sign off on the proposed drainage systems there, depending on what they are proposing. So there is a more detailed and often in the developer's opinion, rigorous process to get to the point of being able to construct anything there. But what is in front of you tonight is just a list of uses that go with the zoning district. It in itself does not give them the ability to alter that site in any way, add any concrete that would increase drainage and runoff.
Mr. Chair, so I'm still kind of confused. Is there a drainage system there now? Have you seen any? I haven't, so.
We don't have any approvals right now or anything in front of us to review right now. So I'm not sure what is there. The city hasn't given the approvals for them to construct any drainage system. So we're just not aware of the state of it at the moment until they come in to submit a permit and site plan, which would indicate the current state of the property. But the applicant may know more about the state of any potential drainage system. There used to be a home structure on the property, so it's conceivable that there was some drainage systems that served the property when the house was there. When it was demolished, we're not sure what took place in terms of them regrading or flattening the land. So from the staff perspective, we can't say, but it is possible something is there currently addressing drainage. But I would defer to the applicant on the current state of the property.
Okay, Mr. Chair, Mr. Sherman, I kind of lost my thought. You took it a long way. Okay. Does it come back to planning and zoning, or does it go straight to council? How does that work?
So any public hearing site plan, yes, would have to go to city council for your go to planning and zoning board for your recommendation before it goes to city council. This particular property has a site plan that they would be proposing to amend just to add one additional lot to it. That's what brought them here. They bought an additional lot. They want to expand their parking onto the additional lot. So generally speaking, we're just adding a small parcel to existing site plan. We wouldn't necessarily need to bring it to a public hearing in city council as if it was a completely new development. But as I said a moment ago, I could consult with legal to see if there's a way to facilitate you even getting a cursory review of what's being proposed before anything is approved, or what options there are if there's concerns or unreadiness from the board. But generally speaking, an administrative site plan approval wouldn't have to go to a public hearing. And again, if any of that doesn't make sense, I'm happy to expound more, though.
Okay, I mean, I kind of understand it a little bit more now. It's a lot going on over there, and I want to make sure that I have the opportunity to kind of vet it out a little bit. If they're asking me questions, I want to be able to answer it. I don't want to go on something that was put together. So I want a clear picture when I'm talking, that I pretty much understand how it's going. I just think that area has a very bad water retention problem when it rains, especially when it rained last week. I really went out and looked at it. So that's my only concerns. I have no problem with the project. I really don't. I think it's a good project because I see a lot going on in that area. I just have those concerns with the water drainage. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. And we've heard this drainage issue there over and over on other development sites. So please make sure you keep us posted. And as we talked last time, I know some other developers have proposed permeable
Favors.
a pavement,
Favors.
so the water drains into the existing
Mhm.
land. So it gives a little bit more instead of just running off into the neighbor's yard or into the street, and then it causes what Ms. Shepherd says. Okay,
Right.
thank you very much, Mr. Sherman, for your explanation. Ms. Shepherd, thank you for the questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let me move this along. You've heard Ms. Marseille give the description. What you have here is the photo of the existing property, boat owner's warehouse. To your left, you see the lots that they own, lot 128, and also the lot in question. Both of those parcels have an RS8 zoning. When I say part, I mean a part of lot 128 has a RS8 zoning, and then the other parcel in blue has an RS8 zoning designation at this time.
What is the RSA? What,
Single family residential. I'm sorry, ma'am.
can you just say that for me?
Single family residential. Yes. You see there the overall proposed description. It's an existing parking area, RSA, single family residential. The land use is downtown mixed use. Now, this is a photo of the existing current zoning. What you have here, just the right of way to the just north there is East 23rd Street. And to the south there, adjacent to the subject property, is East 22nd Court. Broadway is to your left, along in front of 2230, and then over to your right is also in the RSA. Right now, what you see here is the two lots in question in the RSA zoning district. And the proposed zoning is to have the two lots rezoned from single family residential to downtown core. Now, mind you, the land use is downtown mixed use. And under the downtown mixed use zone, land use designation, it allows for multiple uses, such as commercial, retail, residential. In this case, these two lots here are vacant properties used as a parking area, but also to the south of there, that right of way, I'm sure most of you are aware, there is an 8 to 10 foot high hedge screening the area, the south of that area, which is used for parking by Safe Harbor. To the immediate north of the subject property, I can't move away from the microphone, but I can tell you this, is that this area here is used as a parking area or storage area for the property, I guess, to the left. So what you have here is downtown core and downtown residential, but this is a vacant lot used for storage by Safe Harbor. You have the subject property, and then you have the property to the north, which is also used like a parking storage area. So you have an idea of some similar uses. The property here that the applicant is using would like to use this as an accessory parking lot to this use here, the boat owners, which is on 2230 Broadway. Okay, that north destination is incorrect, so I'm going to skip this page. The staff analysis essentially comes down, there are 8 standards in your backup, and essentially it comes down to whether the proposed amendment will be consistent with all elements of the comprehensive plan, and whether and to the extent to which the proposed amendment is inconsistent with existing and proposed land uses. I went through that exercise before with the prior slides to show you that in the staff's professional opinion, this proposed rezoning for the use of an accessory parking lot doesn't appear to be inconsistent with the surrounding land uses, okay? And then policy 1.8.1, downtown mixed use, that is in the comprehensive plan. It talks about the downtown mixed use category, which provides for a wide range of uses, et cetera, retail, commercial, residential. As I've said before, the rezoning provides for a transition between the mixed-use corridor and the single-family residential district. By making a recommendation to council to approve this, you're allowing for a transitional area. I was just at that site on my way here, and there were maybe 2 cars in the entire parking area. In other words, it's very quiet. And that's the idea. When at night, you don't want a whole lot of traffic and noise anywhere around the residential areas uh, to the east to the east, but primarily. So therefore, by creating a separation, you see what's closest. Essentially, what I want to get down to is that the parking lot would serve as an accessory use to the principal use, that being on 2230 Broadway. It's a principal use. The parking area would be an accessory use. Objective 1.2, redevelopment policy, and 1.2.21 talks about how Broadway is intended to reestablish the area as pedestrian friendly with storefronts lining the street and interconnected parking in the rear. I want to emphasize that because the interconnected parking in the rear, well, that's exactly what this property is. It's in the rear of the subject property. And then the applicant is proposing to use the rear parcel as interconnecting parking for its commercial use along Broadway. And in addition, according to the future land use map, the subject property has a downtown mixed use land use classification, which allows commercial uses such as accessory parking lot. And then I also went into the area about, although the land use destination for the applicant's requested downtown mixed use, the single family residential zoning district is not in sync with the existing uses of the subject property, or even you can even question about the surrounding area. So what this petition is looking, what staff looked at, was to see how we can put this more in sync with the existing uses. And so therefore, the implementation of the rezoning request will replace an incompatible zoning designation with a compatible zoning designation that will permit an accessory parking area. And then I talk about the next paragraph about the downtown mixed use category, which the current zoning district of the property does not allow for an accessory parking lot accessory use. Public notices were sent out. This was the prior, and for this cycle of the hearing, we did not receive any comment for or against. Is that correct, ma'am?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So moving on, staff recommends approval of this, and that's based upon the findings of fact, the 3 that you see there. They're all pretty much, I went over 1.1.8.1. The proposed amendment is consistent with existing and proposed uses, as I tried to demonstrate in the presentation. And the Planning and Zoning Board, we recommend the Planning and Zoning Board review and recommend to the council approval of the proposed rezoning request. And then, we're looking at the staff making a professional presentation to the city council doing the same, with the condition that the applicant must submit a complete site plan amendment application to include the newly acquired property as the earlier conversation. So that's the intent there, to try to meet those concerns. And that concludes the staff's presentation. The applicant's attorney representative is here. Ms. Lisa Revis is here. I've passed out those documents, and so now we yield to Ms. Revis. And I ask you to hold your questions until Ms. Revis makes presentation, and then you may have additional questions, but she's here.
Thank you.
Now we got to close. Yeah, we're gonna close my presentation. Now let's see if we can get into it. There we go.
Mr. Thompson did a very thorough job, and I thank him for that. So I'm just going to briefly, good evening, Chairman and board members. I'm Lisa Revis of Becker and Polyakov, and I represent Second Avenue Properties Incorporated. We're looking to rezone 30 East 22nd Court, and as a housekeeping item, staff has requested that we rezone our existing parking lot, both from RS8 to downtown core, to allow for additional parking at Boat Owners Warehouse. The subject site, outlined in red, is approximately 1/10 of an acre, and again located at 30 East 22nd Court, approximately 800 feet south of Blue Heron Boulevard, adjacent to Boat Owners Warehouse existing parking, and again zoned RS8. The existing parking lot is approximately 0.1466 acres. The property owner has owned and operated their business at this site continuously since 1996. The current parking lot is included on the approved site plan. Our rezoning complies with the review criteria in that it's consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan and provides for a harmonious transition between the mixed-use corridor and the single-family residential district by creating a larger separation between the residential and commercial uses. Our project currently has insufficient parking and was approved with insufficient parking. The changed condition which requires the amendment is the parcel immediately adjacent to our parking lot was listed for sale, and we purchased it to fix the parking inadequacies. The proposed amendment is consistent with the existing and proposed land uses, as all the property in the general area have a future land use of downtown mixed use. The expansion of the parking lot will not impact public facilities. Since the subject parcel is vacant with no vegetation, the amendment will not adversely impact the natural environment. The expansion of the existing parking lot will not adversely affect the property values in the surrounding area. The amendment creates an orderly and logical development pattern that complies with the policies of the city's comprehensive plan. And I respectfully request your approval, and I'll answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Shepherd,
Yeah.
Mr. Guyton.
I just have a couple of quick questions, but they're more to staff than it is to you. And it's just for my understanding and edification. And I'm not going to rehash the project, but just two questions. There are two lots being considered for rezoning, lot 128, 129. 128, as I understand it, has an existing parking lot on it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does that lot have the catch basin on it?
Yes, sir, it does. Ms. Revis, can you bring that up and point that
Catch
out?
basin.
And I'm sure most people know what a catch basin is. It's a drainage infrastructure where water goes when it rains. Now, my next question and my last question is for lot 129. That is now abutting residential where people actually live. Initially, when they bought that property at 129 and they tore it down, there was some space between where people live and existing business. Safe Harbor, as you indicated, if I understood it correctly, put up a tree line between residential and their property. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Along the south end, it's about 8 to 9 foot high Calusa hedge along that entire street along East 23rd.
Well, I'm leading somewhere. My last question is, has there been consideration to put up a similar buffer on lot 29 to buffer from those
Residential.
residential homes. It's changing from residential to downtown core, which has a variety of different uses, restaurants, entertainment, a lot of different uses that are possible. Right now, it's just a proposed parking lot, I assume. But still, I was curious to know, has staff had that discussion with the applicant about putting up some type of buffer there?
Edging.
Yes, some type of buffer
Mhm.
to give those residents that actually live in those homes some form of
A screening.
screening.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just
Board Member
read-
Guyton, there is currently a privacy fence there. The wooden, you can't see it in the photograph, but there is. And when we come through with site plan, I'm sure we'll be required to put a perimeter buffer on the parking lot. So yes,
Okay, so the site plan for the parking lot has
Yes.
not come through yet.
not yet. It'll come in after we get our zoning approval.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
So, Mr. Sermons, when it does come for your approval for a parking lot, is it part of the prerequisites to build a barrier like Safe Harbor did?
Yes, our landscape code has a requirement for buffers between commercial and residential, and that section of the code would have to be enforced as we review the proposed site plan. If what they propose doesn't meet it, we provide comments, say, hey, the buffer is a minimum of this amount with this type of landscaping per this section of the code, and the site plan would not be approved until they meet those requirements, and that's generally how our process goes.
What about recommending the use of permeable surface? Can we recommend that to the applicant?
So the city engineer generally has that conversation with them,
Okay.
and typically they're provided with the minimum requirements that must be met, and they have a slate of options that they can choose from to meet the minimum requirements. And often that requirement is no drainage can come off of this lot for any 100-year storm, which is this much water, and they have to provide calculations that show that they will meet that. So we're not, the planning and zoning staff isn't intimately involved in that aspect of it, but that is an option that the city engineer has afforded, and they have associated calculations of permeable pavers versus grass versus concrete, and they have to do the math and make the math work to meet the drainage minimum standards at that time when they come in with the site plan and the attached drainage documentations, plans, and reports.
Thank you. Mr. Wiles?
No question.
Mr. Brown?
No questions.
Do we have any comments from anyone here, public comments on this application?
Mr. Chair?
None?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Shepherd?
may I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Guyton, what did you call that, a base?
Catch basin.
Okay,
BASI.
okay. I did see that. While I was there. I really didn't see the water go down there.
Okay.
The water was on that side of 22nd Street.
Okay.
That's why I was so confused, why the water didn't go down. I call it a basin. I'm from the north. I call it a basin.
It is.
So, the water did not go down. That's why I'm so curious with the residents coming off, well, I'm 23rd, 22nd, coming through that way, we have to stop at the light. It's flooded out with water. I could not figure out why it did not go in that basin. That's all I'm trying to get. Are we gonna allow them to build and the water is not going in the basin? Or we're gonna allow them to build, whatever they're gonna do, I don't know. With the water coming on the side and people are getting out their cars to go into the facility, how is that gonna work?
I've got a quick. The catch basin is for properties that have them are site specific. They're not to catch all of the water that's coming from everywhere. It's just for that parking lot and that property.
To catch the water?
Yes, on that property.
Okay, the basin is sitting right there at 22nd Street.
Yeah. I
The water is coming down 22nd Street. Why is it not going in there? I'm kind of confused Why is it not going in the basin?
I'm not an engineer.
Know what I'll ask them, maybe.
But my point is that when the property has a catch basin, it's for that property. It's
Understand.
not for water coming from down the street and all that. It's to make sure that that property doesn't flood.
Right, Mr. Guyton is correct that the intent here is to make sure that the parking area or whatever is placed there does not or we try to minimize and not try to outright eliminate any adverse impacts to the adjacent properties. So when they apply for a building permit for the parking area, ma'am, they will, as Mr. Sermons has said, they'll go through the engineer who would then look at
They'll look at
and
the
determine,
broader impact.
right, the proper drainage process, if you will, or methodology using drainage coefficients, et cetera, to try to keep as much water on their site as possible so that in the event there is any runoff, we try to minimize that adverse impact. And that's why the building permit process is going to be a part of the review process. That's included in the building permit process.
May I continue, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Please forgive me, this is where I live. That we continuously allow the developers, the people to come in, we look sideways, we overlook it. And then when the flood comes down or whatever happened to that neighborhood, then all of the people from that area, that's when they come to the city and complain. When we should have been taking a closer look as what is being done in the city in that particular area. I'm for the project, but I'm just trying to protect where the residents have to drive, where they have to walk. And you're saying it goes to council and, I just feel like we're giving this a deaf ear. But that's my opinion. I'm through, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sermons?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may, just add that when the existing development and streets were constructed, they went through the same reviews as far as drainage. But one aspect that is sometimes overlooked is just the maintenance of those systems over time. So it's possible that a swell, a pipe, a drain could be clogged and is causing the ponding that you're describing recently. So what I will do after this meeting is reach out to the Public Works Department just to request that they look at that area just to make sure that the systems that are already in place are functioning properly. And and the maintenance is a very important aspect of these systems over their lifespan. So it could be a maintenance issue that needs to be looked into. So I will reach out to the Public Works Director to see if they could send someone to this area just to check the drains and any pipes and swales there to make sure that they're clear and not being blocked up, causing the ponding that you said you observed recently.
Mr. Chair, may I bring up one more point?
Yes,
In
ma'am.
that area, that's where City Hall is going to go. Mr. Mahoney was here, if you all remember, and he said that area where he stays at flooded out, which is across the street from where they want to build. So now you're going to get St. Mark's there, you're going to get City Hall there. I understand you're going to put the library there. And now it's going to be congested because now you don't know what's going to happen. It might need to be cleaned out. I'm not sure, but I'm very sure that I passed by there and saw the puddle of water. That's my only concern, that we make sure that it is admirable for those residences in that area. I heard you say you put the sign out, but did anybody put any door knockers out, any letters out, or you just took it for granted that they looked at the yellow sign like I do? Or what is your thinking? I don't get it.
The notice does require that a mailer goes to homes within 300 feet. So if you're beyond that 300, you may not have personally gotten one. But that is the minimum standard for notice in our code. So those residents or properties within 300 feet did receive something in the mail regarding this hearing.
Nothing more, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sermons, we did have a resident that came in adjacent to lot 129, and he was worried on the last meeting that whatever the parking lot or anything, he didn't want the water overflowing into his property, damaging his property. But going back to the point, I know we got a new public works director, Roberto Travieso. If we can ask him to take a look, I've seen city trucks at other areas recently pumping out, cleaning up the sewer. But can we make sure that they take one run in there, because we keep hearing the same thing over and over? They need to get out there and check. As far as the applicant is concerned, could you let your owners know, just check that catch basin on the other, so they can, if there's anything they can, please, and just the word going back to them would be, we're very keen at looking at drainage in the area. If they can improve it, be great. As far as other developments, Mr. Sermons, I think we had an agreement with developers. I know it was said during Safe Harbor, and our major developers often upgrade their sewer system and the water systems into the city, and they tap into the city, but they're responsible for those upgrades around their development. Am I correct? The major developers.
For the drainage systems,
To tap in, correct?
they are responsible for constructing any necessary drainage to contain their site's water flow. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so that would
Okay.
apply to the major city hall. That's going to be a major complex. The library and everything else is going to go there.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. Any other questions? If there's no public statement, nothing else, do I have a motion to, for the rezoning application approval ZA 230010 as read into the record by Ms. Davidson?
So moved.
Second.
Chair Fernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiley,
Yes.
Board Member Shepherd,
Yes.
Board Member Guyton.
Yes.
Mr. Brown. You have a unanimous vote, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Can we now move on to the next business and make sure if we have any comments, they submit the public comment cards, please? I know we had some folks that walked in late, and good evening and welcome for those walked in afterwards.
Item 7B, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 31 zoning, Article 6, Supplemental District Regulations, Section 31-544, childcare, daycare, and other preschool facilities in order to update regulations for childcare home and large family childcare home, and amending Chapter 31-zoning, Article 3, Site Plan Review, Section 31-61, Review Procedures for Special Exceptions in order to update fees, providing for applicability, conflicts, severability, and codification, and providing for an effective date.
All right, good evening again, Mr. Chair. For the record, I am Clarence Sermons, Director of Development Services for the City of Riviera Beach. The item before you today is staff initiated, but more specifically, it was initiated by community members that expressed concerns to city staff as well as elected officials about some of the requirements that exist in our land development code as it relates to daycares. So what we've done is taken that feedback into account and crafted a proposed text amendment that we believe creates the appropriate balance between responding to community concerns and a call to action by the board or city council, and balancing the interests of the public and the neighborhoods in which these uses are. So what we will do is present to you the proposed amendments, and at the very end, we would like you all to specifically weigh in on a recommendation as it relates to one of the development aspects. So without further ado, I will begin the presentation, and I will note that I see several of those community members present that we met with several times as we've developed this proposed text amendment. So I will go ahead and get started, and I'm sure you may have some public comment cards after we finish so that they can provide their thoughts and comments as well. So I will start with at a high level to just give an overview of what the code regulates when it comes to daycares, and then I'll get into what the proposed text amendments are. So Section 31-544 of the Land Development Code regulates family daycare homes and large family daycare homes. Family daycare homes are allowed by right within the allowed zoning districts as long as they are licensed by the local authority, which is the county in our case. So in those residential zoning districts, there is nothing that these uses need to come to the city for, as long as they are get their license from the county and any business tax receipts that are applicable. There's not a land development process for it, so to speak. So the other use, large family daycare homes are regulated in the following areas: the maximum child capacities, the minimum floor areas, indoor and outdoor, the parking and loading requirements, and the allowable zoning districts and separation requirements. The first two of those areas of regulation are handled by the licensing authority, which is the county, and the city does not, cannot override their jurisdiction when it comes to that. So we mimic the language that they have in our code, but at the end of the day, they are the governing body for that. But as far as parking and loading regulations for these uses, the zoning districts that they are allowed in, any separation requirements, that is the city's area of responsibility when it comes to these uses. So for the less intense use, family daycares, the proposed updates that we are bringing before you are to, one, update the maximum child capacities to reflect language in the county health department, who is the regulating entity. The language we have in there right now mentions the maximum capacity that they have, but we're adding just some clarification to state that whatever the county says is the max is what applies and what the city will follow. And this is, we found this necessary because the state amended the statute that relates to it, what the maximums are, but the state allows counties to regulate them themselves, and the counties can be more strict. Palm Beach County has chosen to be more strict than what the state says. So in our language, with the maximums that are listed there, we've stated that this is the max or whatever the county regulating entity has stated. And that's what you will see in the underlying strike through document in your backup. And also we've clarified the regulating bodies, updated. HRS is no longer the name of the state agency governing these uses. So we've updated that language and stated that, again, in the event of a conflict between state law and county regulations, the more stringent is what applies. So that is the lesser intense use, the regular family daycare. As far as the large family daycare, we have proposed several amendments to this section based on the feedback that we've gotten. And the first is the application fees. One of what has been described as the barriers for establishing these uses by this business community has been the cost of. Costs involved include site plan fees, special exception fees, and advertisement fees, and they total $4,500. What staff is proposing with this amendment is that for this use, that half of it is what they must pay, and the second half can be waived by City Council upon their review and approval of the project, which would effectuate a fee of $2,250. The second proposed update is the same as the less intense daycare, clarifying the regulating bodies and conflicts, updating the titles of the agencies that are in charge of this, and clarifying that if there is a conflict, the more stringent applies, and clarifying that the city doesn't set the maximum standards or minimum floor area for these uses, but the county, the regulating authority, is the entity that does that. So we're clarifying those things just to make sure that there's not confusion when someone comes to our department reading our regulations and asking questions as to what applies and what controls. And then the third area that we have looked into is the parking requirements. So currently the code states that for daycares, one space for large family daycares. And again, these are uses that are in residential neighborhoods, not commercial districts or commercial scale operations. So for these residential daycares, the code states that 1 space per employee, minimum of 3 spaces, plus adequate provision for drop-off of children. So we take that to mean a minimum of 3 parking spaces in your driveway or expanded driveway, and then somewhere where cars can pull up to offload their children and move on to their next destination. So that drop-off area could be a 4th space, or it could be a loop driveway or something of that nature that allows the parents of those children to be able to quickly get in, get their children out, and get back in their car and move out. So effectively, in many cases, that means 4 spaces, but it could conceivably be 3 with a kind of looped driveway area that allows for that drop-off next to the building as the code requires. So we simplify that to say 4 spaces total. The question that staff wants to make sure we get a clear recommendation from this body is what that looks like. So there are 4 spaces currently. Should it be reduced to 3? Any single family home already requires 2 spaces. So that's a given. If someone wants to establish a large family daycare right now, they would have to pour additional concrete, as you can see in the picture there, to expand their driveway in most cases to allow for a 3rd and 4th vehicle to get in there. So this question, we wanted to make sure we got a recommendation from this body, because parking is something that can easily affect the neighboring properties, and we don't want overflow. And in the maximum cases, a large family daycare can hold up to 12 children. So it's conceivable that during peak hours, multiple persons could be coming to drop off their children at these places of business. So the parking aspect of it is something that has been called into question as a potential hardship. It is a significant expense to get a contractor and get a survey and plan of your property to show where that additional parking and paving area is going to be, and then getting the construction work done. So again, in any scenario, the minimum requirement of a house is 2. There would have to be at least a 3rd space to expand for a business. Right now, our code requires 4. So we have done research on multiple municipalities in the area just to see where our regulations fell. This is the form that you have passed out, the larger sheet of paper. We've looked at some of our peer municipalities in size, such as Green Acres. We've looked at some larger local governments, such as the county in West Palm Beach, and also Palm Beach Gardens, just to kind of benchmark where we stand. And it does vary. There are some localities that require 3, some that require more than what we look for at Riviera Beach. So we don't necessarily see a industry standard as it relates to this, and it does vary based on different local governments. So staff is comfortable with what is in the code. If the board recommends that we provide some relief, we've provided some sample language in your strike-through markup that would allow flexibility of moving it down to 3 instead of 4. But we would prefer that this board make a recommendation in the way of a vote as to what you would send to city council for your recommendation of as to whether it should stay 4 spaces or be reduced to 3. That would conclude the staff presentation. And I am, of course, available if there are any questions on anything that you have heard so far on this.
Shepherd?
I did have a question. Did you ever get any complaints about over parking or any off parking on the street? Have you ever got any type of complaint?
To my knowledge, I haven't received any complaints about existing large family daycares. And I did pull the information based on our BTR records. I can't remember the exact number, and I don't want to say the wrong thing on the record, but we have a decent amount of them established in the city. To my knowledge, there hasn't been any complaints of persons saying that, there's a traffic issue or anything of that nature. Mind you, that is with the current requirement of 4 spaces. So if we reduce that to 3, we are changing what is currently established that we don't have complaints about.
Offhand, how many daycares do we have, home daycares do we have in the city?
I have it in my email. I can look it up if you give me a moment. I think it was around 12, but again, I'm not positive on
At
the
all
exact
for this
number.
city?
Small and large.
For large.
For the
But
large.
let me double check before I confirm that. So I'll need a moment to step away and double check that.
Okay, now you're talking just for the large ones, not the small daycares, because you do have small daycares in the city.
Yes, both would be required to get a business tax receipt, but the numbers we looked up were for large family, and I'll confirm that momentarily.
Okay, so that was a one-time application fee that you had on the board?
Correct. And that's to get to the public hearing and the staff time involved in reviewing and following up with the applicant, and it covers a portion of that.
Well, I think the daycares that I've been to and had, my children at, I think they're doing an excellent job, and I just wish we had more, because I have grandchildren now, and, you know, I want to stick them somewhere I'll be comfortable. And these ladies, they look like, well, they've been before so many times at city council meeting, and I just hear them all talking, and I just want to say you all make me proud for your service, because that's a service to take care of, what, 12 children is the max? That's a lot of kids, y'all. I had 3, and that was, you have 12. Amazing, amazing. But anyway, I guess it was all that I had to. Yeah, I think that's it. About them parking on the street. Any complaints about the parking on the street?
None that I'm aware of at the
No.
moment.
That's an A+. Nothing else. I think they're doing just an excellent job, and keep on doing what you're doing. My partner back there looking at me, she know I watches her all the time, her daycare. She does an excellent job, and I thank her really for her service. Very good job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Mr. Guyton?
Just a couple of quick questions. Mr. Thurman, you said that the state statute was updated in regards to child care services,
Yes.
and the county has not, as of yet, updated their regulations to be consistent with the state. Is that correct?
That's correct. We spoke multiple times, and I actually am remiss. I have not introduced Ms. Anise Simon, principal planner, who worked extensively and diligently on this item as well. And she personally spoke with the county department that regulates this use about that. They are aware of the updated state statute, and they said at this time they have declined to take it up as they're prioritizing other things, from my understanding of her conversation with them. And they may or may not adopt it, but as of right now, they are aware of it, and they are operating under their current rules and regulations. The state does allow counties to be more strict than what they allow. And they have increased the maximum amount of children in regular size family daycares, but the county still has the current cap. And if and when they update them, this text amendment, we've tried to craft it in a way such that we don't have to necessarily bring it back. If the county regulations allow more, the language that's proposed before you says that we default to whatever the regulating agency has put the cap as.
So, overall, are the updates beneficial to the daycare operators?
The updates in the state statute?
Yes.
I would presume they are, if the state legislature made that change, but I have not looked extensively into the records or their findings in creating that update.
Last question. So the county is the licensing authority.
Right.
Does the city have any flexibility to incorporate any of the updates without the county doing it first?
No.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, sir. Could you explain what's the difference between a small and a large daycare? What's like 4 kids for small, 5, what, and can you give us a little detail?
It's the intensity. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, go for it. Yeah, one more question.
Parking.
Yeah.
In our community, and I was born and raised here, it's more of a blue collar community. We don't have millionaires and people making a lot of money that live over on the west side. So to put an additional financial burden on those who are trying to be independent entrepreneurs, to do that unnecessarily, I don't think would be fair. So I would support just 3 spaces for now, unless there are numerous complaints that it becomes a problem. So if there's some language that if the problem arises, if there are 15, 20 complaints, or something of that nature, but because if there are problems, we just can't ignore the problems. Now, that's being real and rational. But if there are no complaints, they handling their business, I would not support requiring them to make that expenditure, knowing that the kids and the parents of those kids probably are not providing substantial resources for that particular care. So I would support just 3, unless there are numerous complaints and it becomes a problem.
Piggybacking off what I was had on my parking was the other one. Let's finish
Sorry
up with the
about that.
small or large daycare. What's small? 6, up to 6?
Okay. Yes.
You got some help from the audience. That's not fair.
Called in
All
the
right, small
lifeline.
is up to 6?
Yes, up to 6 for a large family.
And
I'm sorry, a regular family childcare is
And then a
6.
large daycare, that would be in a complex, or can that also be in a house?
In a house.
A larger a house or a complex?
House.
It could also be in a house? Okay. Now, as far as the parking is concerned, yeah, I'm not into having over regulations for small businesses, or especially daycare centers. Parents need a place to drop off their child when they go to school. We can't impose too much on the daycare providers. I'm okay with 3 parking spots as long as they please have a safe way to drop off the children. Some of the single family homes, I mean, you can't have it. It's Blue Heron. There's no way in heck you can have cars doubled up on Blue Heron with the little kids jotting across the street or something to get into the residence. But at least if they have a safe area to drop off the kids, I definitely less on the daycare provider 3. As far as the expenses, $4,500, that's a lot. The only thing I'm not too keen on is $2,250, and then the city council can individually recommend waiver of the additional $2,250. Why don't we just recommend the flat fee of $2,250?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't even leave it. I mean, this is daycare we're talking about here. As Mr. Cotton said, this is a blue collar community in the Shepherd. We all support daycare here. So I wouldn't even leave it. I would my humble opinion, the recommendation would be $2,250, period. 3 parking spots. As long as they have a safe drop off and pick up for the children. You know, little guys wander around a lot. And as far as the other regulations, I know we talked about this before. If they have backyards, I know we have recommended to the other daycare providers that they please put a little canopy outside to prevent the children. I mean, I'm talking about the larger scale. If they can, if they bring them outside, you know, just let's look after the kids. Does that sound reasonable?
Mr. Chair,
Okay, yeah.
this is a question for both of you. For this particular one, we allow daycares to pay half up front and then half after. So with the $2,250 or whatever it is, would we do half of that $2,250 up front and then the other half after? If we're trying to figure out how to ensure people are able to have a small business, or are we saying a flat?
I would say however you want. If it's easier for our daycare to do half 1225 and then 1225 upon final approval, fine. However, it's more feasible for the city to run it. I just want to cap it at 2250. No option for having someone waive the other 2250.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Shepherd?
Mr. Sherman, why is the fee so high?
She's,
I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, to me, they got to work all year to pay that fee. I mean, why is it so high?
If I may respond, Mr. Chair,
yes.
the fees are intended to capture a portion of the staff time required to bring these items through review and to city council. So this is the site plan fee, the special exception fee, and the advertisement fee all combined. So when someone submits a project, there are probably a dozen plus staff members that spend significant hours reviewing these projects. And as I alluded to earlier with the earlier project, it's generally not one review. They submit it and we say, yep, it's correct. You can go to council. We'll say, hey, your setbacks are not the minimum requirements per the code, or your drainage plan is missing data. So that we send them comments and then they have to send it back and then staff has to review it again. And it's usually about 3 rounds of review minimum just to get a project ready for public hearing for this one. And then for these hearings, there's required public notices, and depending on the project, a public notice ad for the Palm Beach Post could be about $800, $900. So the advertisement fee of $1,000 is just to recoup a portion of the city's expenses in ensuring we're protecting public safety and the land development code when we are reviewing these projects. So it doesn't cover the amount of city resources that goes into the review of these applications. But the difference is this is right now, the site plan special exception fee applies to everything. So if you are building a multi-million-dollar development, it's $4,500. If you are establishing a large family daycare, it's $4,500. So right now, the code doesn't make a distinction on the type of use and how much of a burden it may be for that user. So what is being proposed here is taking that into consideration for this particular use. But that's why the fees are what they are.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one more question?
Sure.
In the daycare, I don't think they're making that much money. And that's, to me, I think you should waive part of that money. Just my opinion. If they were multimillionaires, I would say, yeah, let them pay it. Like some of the developers come here, they're rich, they pay it. They don't think nothing about it. But I know it's a lot that they have to do in order to get the daycare running, because I had a nighttime daycare, and I tell you, it's a lot of work. I can't remember how I got the money. I really don't. I can't remember how I got the money. It wasn't $4,000 back in the day. I see my kid is 49. Okay, let's go back. It was only, I think, $1,200. Now I remember, it's just $1,200. And now it's 40, what is it, 42?
45.
Lord have mercy, that's a meal. That's a lot of steaks you're going to give up.
That's why we're trying to cut it down.
You won't be eating popcorn, I tell you that, dude. But just to think about it, I just think that's a lot of money. And they're not rich. They're just trying to make a living. If they clear each $12,000 a year, they're clearing money. It's my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mr. Sermer, you mentioned that major developers pay the same thing that child care providers do as well.
Right, the fee schedule right now
Yeah.
doesn't have any contemplation.
And
of
I
the
think
type of
that's
use.
something council need to address. But for now, what just jumped out at me is that most of these child care providers, especially if they're working out of their homes, they're residents of Riviera Beach, which means if they own their home, they're paying Avalon taxes. They're already making a contribution towards staff. If it's a big developer, don't live in our community, fine. if it's a child care home provider doing something as precious as taking care of our kids, making sure they have a safe place, we need to work with them. So, and they're already paying ad valorem taxes. So, the deferment or contributing something to employees' time and effort, that's already being done through ad valorem taxes. And for the big developers that are not living here, you may consider raising theirs and lowering those who actually live in our community, providing a service that is as valuable as what they're doing, the protection of our kids. So I would definitely support a rate that has been suggested by our chair, as well as them paying half up front and half when they get the permit, to make it as easy as possible for them to provide the service that they're providing to our kids. And with everything that's happening in this world today, and you never know who you can trust with your kids, that is invaluable. That's all I have right now.
So it's the same thing. We're just 2250, period. Half now, half whenever later on down the road, give them a little breathing room. I'll tell you, like, as our opinion is, and I haven't heard from the rest, we're going to move on to Mr. Wiley. But if we can do less, if we can crunch those numbers, I'm amenable to also lowering that 2250 for Riviera Beach residents who have daycares for our kids. Does that make sense? So if you can squeeze a couple of our 2250, I know city council want to, but if we can go lower on that amount, we would recommend a lower amount than 2250. Okay, thank you. Mr. Wiley?
Yes, yes, just a few comments. First of all, I'd like to commend the ladies for running the daycare center. I know I have a couple of neighbors that run the daycare center in the Federal Gardens area, and they do pretty well with it. So thanks, ladies, for helping out, especially with the kids. I'm in education myself in the middle school level, and I know how hard it is. So it starts with you guys. So thanks a lot for doing that job. I agree, sort of. With some of the information, but I want to get clarification from you, Mr. Sherman. That daycare, we say 4,500, and I agree definitely with the 2,250. Then saying that the other half was going to be waived, given certain specifications. What were those specifications to where they could be waived or it won't be waived? Who will make that decision, and why, and what reasons will prevent that?
It just gave, the way it was previously constructed, gave the council to the ability to waive it as concerns were expressed about the amounts that are required for this operation. So it just gave the option for council to.
Right. So the 2,250 will be the automatic payment that you would do in the beginning. And then for the other 2,250, at that point, that had the option to be waived.
Yes, the code already built in a payment plan for large family daycares, and it only required half up front when they submit their application, and the other half was to be paid before it goes to city council. So what staff started with was tweaking the code to say that instead of paying it right before city council, saying that city council can waive the remaining fees due. But again, based on this conversation, we can change that language to state that that the fee is just lower for large family daycares, and they still have the option of the payment plan, so half up front and then half after city council, from what I'm hearing as the desire from this body, and we'll update the language to reflect that based on what I'm hearing so far.
Okay, so when you, and just for clarification for myself, and I guess for people on TV, just so they will hear it and understand it clearly, the 2,250 will be the initial, that when they start off, and then once going to the board, then they will pay the other 2,250. Or are we talking about 2,250 as the total cost for it once they come in?
Yes, that's what we recommended.
Right,
2250
that's
as
what we
the
recommended.
total cost.
Total
Not having
cost, nothing
council
else.
waive.
No other half.
No.
It's just 2,250
Blank.
in the beginning. That's it.
half and half.
So what I've gathered from your colleagues is that 2250 is the total fee,
Right.
but the payment plan option would still be afforded to these users, where they would only have to pay half of their fee at application time,
Right.
and then the other half due later.
Got it.
Mhm.
Got it. Yeah. And I think also one thing about it, especially on my block, on 13th Street, where this is where the advantage of someone forecasting putting the speed bumps into the neighborhoods now, because now it makes the neighborhoods a lot more safer with, especially with people parking in, picking up the children, and now people have to go slow enough to be able to make sure that, you know, just for safety reasons for the kids coming out, because we don't want kids running out into the middle of the street or anything and getting injured. So again, that's one thing I see now with a lot of the traffic calming things that we have inside our city and with the speed bumps, to where it will make it's very advantageous now to this business coming in, because now it makes a safer neighborhood. So yeah, so I agree with the payment and lowering that cost. And like you said, it's a tough job, and they have a lot of things going on already besides money. And one thing we need to do is make sure that we have very good people who want to be in this position and being well compensated for it also. So we don't want to put any undue burdenship on them. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
On the parking spaces, 3 sounds reasonable to me,
Mhm.
but could we leave the language as 4 and have some kind of variance so the city has some kind of control over it? Is that possible?
So,
Some special exception, or you know?
so it would be based on the site, the individual property, as to whether that fourth one would be required or not, something to that effect.
Yeah, and as Mr. Gaiden was saying, in case a problem comes up, at least the city has some kind of control over it.
Okay, so that the initial, and I believe what Board Member Guyton was saying, that the initial requirement is 3, but if there are complaints, the city has some language to compel them to add a 4th space if there are complaints.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm saying the reverse. Leave it
Okay.
as 4 and have an exception for 3.
Okay.
And if there's a problem, then you know the city can react.
Mr.
Enforcing
Chair,
4.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, board member. I apologize. If I may, before you get too much further into discussing alteration of the parking spaces, I just want to point out that it may be difficult once an applicant gets an approval for 3 spaces to go back and undo that. Typically, once you get a land use approval, you keep that, you have a vested right in that land use approval. So I would not recommend language that says that you, at some point later after approval, increase the number of parking spaces. So I just want to put that on the record before you get too much further into your discussions.
And I can support that. I was the one that recommended some type of language. I can support it. That's if it's 3 is 3.
For the record, that's Tanya earlier, our in-house counsel.
And we'll just have would it be code enforcement to deal with any complaints, or is that a question for the attorney?
I can answer that. Generally, code enforcement, it can be police too, if depending on traffic and moving
Okay.
vehicles.
So it can
Sometimes
be
it's a mixture of
addressed.
both.
I
But
was
yes,
just looking for a way that it could be addressed so that, the process could keep moving. Okay, I'm okay with that.
Chair.
Mr. Wiley Hall, Mr. Question. Ms. Shepherd?
Mr. Chair, since they're here, I sure would like to hear from them. Well, I do hear you in city council meeting, but if 1 or 2 of you all want to say something, I would like to.
We were gonna ask for comments. Mr. Wiley had
Okay.
one question, then we're gonna ask for comments.
Okay, can I ask one question?
Go ahead.
Ask one question. As you all take the podium, whoever it is, I'd like to know about healthcare. How do you handle that? Maybe 1 or 2 of y'all can tell us about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem, Ms. Shepherd. Mr. Wiley?
I just would ask one question. If we ever have it to where, and I don't know whether this happened before, if we had a housing development, let's say, and it was a small, right, and it was required for 3, and for some reason this business was really, really great and they expanded or whatever, then how would those rules change then once it comes to parking and once it comes to other rules and regulations with planning and zoning?
you're saying if there was a small
Right,
family
if it was a
daycare?
small daycare, right, and then business boom, let's say they got a bigger demand, and more kids want to come in, and then those rules would change. They said 6 kids was the minimum, and then 12 kids were for a large. So then once they did that, then how would the rules change with everything else as far as coming to parking and other rules?
So the small family day, for lack of distinguishing terminology, the small family daycare, they simply just need to get a BTR with the city. They can operate and they deal with the county for their license. If they want to be approved to have more than 6 children, they still have to get that approval from the county, and the county has minimum requirements for square footage per child in the home. So the max is 12, but if you don't have, I'll throw a number out there, 30 square foot per child, then you're not eligible for the max. They may say the max for this facility is 10 or 8. Right. So it depends on their minimum square footage requirements, the minimum outdoor play area requirements as to whether this house is even big enough to expand to the maximum. But in that scenario, they would have to come to the city to apply for a site plan and special exception and pay the associated fees. The city would review the property so that we can make a determination as to whether it's a viable use in that location. So it would go to planning and zoning board and city council. Once they have that approval, that is the city signifying to the county that this use is allowed in this area, meeting the city regulations. And the things we regulate are the zoning and parking separation and that kind of thing. So they can take that city council approval to the county department to say that the city has said this use is allowed based on their regulations. The county is going to tell them the maximum number of children they can have.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect.
Ms. Davidson, can you read out the comment cards, please, so we can have our guests up at the podium?
We have 2 comment cards, Mr. Chair. Ms. Felicia Servants.
Good evening, everybody. You guys have really made a lot of good comments. Pretty much all my notes you guys asked Sherman. But first, I just want to say thank you, board members and chair, vice chair, everybody. Thank you. And a lot what you guys were saying. We already are family childcare homes. We already are small business. We already is established. We're trying to grow our businesses, and these are the things that's keeping us from growing our business. That's why we brought it to the city almost a year now, fighting with the city, trying to get some of these things removed. Like even Mr. Sherman said, we have the same requirements as far as parking and fees as if it were a multi-million-dollar business, and we're only a single-family home, just trying to make a little bit more money. And that's all. To go large is not just parking and fees. I mean, we got to be 2 full-time staff, CDA criteria. We got to have 2 years in business, same location, no class violations at all for 2 years. So it's a lot that the health department already put on us to get all that done, and then come to the city, and the city to say, you know what I'm saying, you can't afford for not only $4,500 can't afford it, but it was also non-refundable. That was my first thing. When I first heard it, I was ready. I did my fencing. They said, do your fencing. I did my 6-foot fencing. They say, do your parking. I showed him I did one little thing for the parking, but you got to have 4 parking. Then when they say $45 and you don't get it back and you don't approve, that's scary. So I'm just asking you guys, thank you for listening. Please consider it. Move some of this stuff out the way. We just trying to grow. That's it. Thank you.
And I just hope our comments, our suggestions were on the money.
They were. Thank you.
Ms. Karen Robinson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to say thank you for a couple of reasons. For listening and for knowing our value. The kids start with us first. The babies start with us. So thank you again for knowing our value. And as far as the rules revision, I brought it to the city that the state had changed. And 67 counties out of 67 counties, now only 4 counties have not adopted the regular family child care home. I sit on the health department board, so I don't know when the last time they spoke to them, but last month when I was sitting on the board, they were going to put it off until summertime to review those changes. I said, no, we need to look at it now. It affects us now. It's a barrier to us now. And by me sitting on that board, I was able to pull that code
show them on that board that it existed, that it was a 10-to-1 ratio change. That's dramatic, for regular family child care homes. And the state, again, has 60 counties, and out of those 67 counties, now only 4 have not adopted it. So I brought it to our city, and they researched it, and they said, the county supersedes that. But again, I sit on that board, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail so they can adopt that, because the state already has it. They just choose not to pick it up yet. So I need to let them know that, we need to advocate, and we will. These ladies will advocate that it's a need. We provide an excellent service to our community. We live in the city of Riviera Beach, and we brought it here because we live here. We pay our taxes. We do everything that is required for us to do in this city where we live. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I've been in business almost 20 years. This year will make 20 years I've been in business with my family child care home. I've never had a problem with parking. Nobody has ever came over and said, hey, there is a parking issue. So that has never come up. So, and as far as healthcare, we are small business owners. We have to pay it ourselves. We have to find insurance companies that will cover us.
Excuse me, you have to find your own insurance?
Yes, we have to find our own insurance because we're small business owners. We have to pay that. Nobody pays that for us. And even when it came down to grants in our city, we weren't looked at. So I kind of had to ask them, hey, as far as we're concerned, we're small business owners here. You have to start looking at us. Everybody's looking for small business owners in our community. We're right here. We've been here. Nobody looks at us. So we brought it to the table, and Mr. Sherman can say it. I've told them that. We need y'all to start looking at us. We are business owners. We provide a service to our community and to the children we serve. We scholarship a lot of families when we can't afford it. We still scholarship. I was just in a meeting this week stating that I can't afford to keep scholarshiping people, the children, and that's something I love to do. I scholarship families and I take a loss. But since my taxes and my stuff have went up, I have to look out for my family also. I can't continue to bury, myself in debt. So, we do a lot for our community. We take a lot of losses. And I just hope and pray that you guys, and thank you again for looking at us, looking and knowing our worth here tonight. I really appreciate that. And hopefully they've gotten it written wherein if something does change with the county and they're not so, because I asked them, what is a good thing about being a barrier and being so stringent? What makes that a great thing? Why is that so great to do? Why is that? Nobody can give me that answer yet, but I'm working on it. So hopefully they've got it written. So if something changed, we don't have to come back and ask you guys to help us again. It'll be something already in place, so transition can go smoothly. And that's about it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
again, ladies.
Mr.
Guy.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Sheila Walker wishes to yield her time to Ms. Servants.
Because I forgot to answer your question about healthcare. Yes, we are responsible for finding our own healthcare and paying our own healthcare, as well as daycare license and insurance, homeowners insurance, and other fees that go along with running the small business, not just keeping kids, is what I was going to say. Because I forgot to answer your question when you asked about healthcare. We're responsible for that, out of our pocket. So,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Guyton had a question, Ms. Shepherd.
well, I said at the floor.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh my, Jesus, I lost it. Something I was getting. I have to come back because you took my thought really quick.
While she's getting the thought,
Okay.
my question was, have you all met with the county commissioner that represents this district, Mike Bernard?
not Mr. Bernard, no. We've met with other council members.
And when, this is staff, when you said the county, are you talking about the county government that regulates this or the county health department?
Yes, the health department.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe the representative can assist in your efforts to encourage the health department to move and state, yes.
Well, who can help us? I'm sorry.
No, I said maybe the county commissioner that represents this district can help you all deal with the health department, or know people that can help you deal with the health department.
Donate.
Yeah.
Ms. Shepherd?
I'm getting old, honey. When they stop me, it just clears out. Go ahead. No, I can't think of.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
There was a question earlier about the number of established large family daycares in the city, and the answer to that is 9.
Because it's so hard to go large in the city of Rivera.
How many do we have small?
When was the last time one went
I
large?
don't have that number at the moment.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms.
while
Shepherd?
they're standing there, I know what I want to ask you. Do you guys, I know you're not making it on just this. Do you all have outside jobs also? Is this it?
No. This is it.
This is it?
This is it. 6 to 6. This is it.
Wow. So you're paying the 4,000, whatever. You pay your health care. How the way y'all make it?
We're here to change that. Yeah. And more hours, 6 to 6, before care, 30 minutes. You have to make it work.
Thank you for what you do.
Okay, thank you.
Before care, after care, pick them up from school, drop them off from school, whatever you need.
Well, I'll tell you all the truth. I had 3 and I couldn't even handle them. I really
Please
didn't.
show
I
up at
had
City
to have,
Council.
had help like you all. That's why I appreciate you all so much. I really do. Thank you for coming to the city. Please keep on coming back. The squeaky wheel.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Anyone else on the board have any questions before we vote? Okay, do I have a motion to accept the text amendments discussed tonight? Chapter 31, Section 31544, as read into the record by Ms. Davidson.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I can clarify that I am understanding what you all are voting on.
Okay.
This would be the proposed amendment as read with the changes from this board, that there be a flat fee of $22.50,
2250, half and half.
and that the applicant still have the ability to split that into a 50/50 payment plan, and then that the parking regulations be reduced from 4 to 3 spaces.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chairperson Fernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiley,
Yes.
Hold on, we did have a motion before, but we're gonna have the motion with the clarification that Mr. Sermons just provided on the record.
Yes, if we could do that again and have that motion made and a second before the vote happens, please.
Perfect.
You
Okay,
need to make an amended motion or start all over?
we'll start all over.
Just make an amended motion and have it seconded.
The motion is gonna be amended to, based on Mr. Sermon's clarification of capping it at 2250, half now, or half at the initial onset, and then half before city council, as is currently the change, and the parking spot from 4 to 3.
So move.
Second.
Chairperson Fernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiley,
Yes.
Board Member Shepherd,
Yes.
Board Member Guyton,
Yes.
Alternate Member Brown.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you. Thank you again, ladies.
Thank you, ladies.
We do wish you well. You deserve it.
Any workshop items?
None, Mr. Chair.
Any public comments?
None, Mr. Chair.
Staff updates?
And at this time, Mr. Chair.
Correspondence?
None, Mr. Chair.
Next coming meeting is March 28th, 2024.
That is correct.
It is now 8:16 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Guyton, so you say you have another meeting you go to? How do you
What?
do it? How do you do it?
I have to stay active.